everybody. Hi, everyone. This is Emily Correa, and I am a high school teacher at Santa Monica High School in Santa Monica, California, and I teach Japanese as a foreign language. The title of my presentation and my lit review paper is the Answer Calling? The Effectiveness of CALL, or Computer Assisted Language Learning, on Second Language Acquisition. Oops. There we go. When we were asked to think about our topic for our literature review, I thought about my students and how they can utilize technology in my foreign language classroom. I mean, let's face it, they are digital natives in a digital age, and they use their cell phones and tablets like they're an extension of their own hand. So I figured there must be a way to capture their expertise and enthusiasm for technology in my foreign language classroom. Also, I chose this topic because, selfishly, I wanted to know more about programs that I could use in my classroom. So the research question for my literature review is, what kinds of programs are most effective in increasing language acquisition? And when I came up with this question, I initially thought of vocabulary programs like Quizlet or even Rosetta Stone that a lot of us are already familiar with, but through my research I found that computer-assisted language learning was actually much more. The first subsection is exposure to authentic second language texts through technology, and I thought I would begin my subsections with Professor Stephen Krashen. Some of you may have heard of him before. He is generally referred to as the godfather of second language acquisition, and in this first subsection, it discusses second language acquisition in the way he defines it as and his theory for second language acquisition. Acquisition happens when the target language is internalized, so you don't have to think about it. It's not mechanical. And Professor Krashen maintains that acquisition happens when comprehensible input is exposed to the learner, and the learner is exposed to the language in an authentic way, makes connections and meaning for him or herself. And the best way that this happens is through immersion and exposure to real, authentic texts. And by authentic texts, I mean both written and audio text, as opposed to, say, mechanical drills. So therefore, it's no surprise that Professor Krashen and Hugh Jarvis studied the use of call programs by language students using questionnaires with Thai and Arabic-speaking students studying English as a foreign language. And Jarvis and Krashen found that not many students used tutorial call programs, the traditional call programs that teach vocabulary or grammar specifically, but instead more students use the computer or other technologies to access information in English for authentic academic purposes and for social purposes like Facebook, YouTube, and whatnot, in authentic ways. So they expose themselves to the target language, comprehensible input in a more immersion style way. as opposed to the mechanical call way. Jarvis and Krashen concluded that the traditional call programs were good to monitor or self-correct vocabulary and grammar, but true language acquisition happened with the use of technology in authentic and meaningful ways. The second study by Jarvis and Mariana Achilleos continued to study the use of technology to access authentic texts. Again, the research participants were English as a foreign language students. And the researchers found that the learners preferred learning English by accessing authentic sites and apps versus using English tutorials. Surprise, surprise. Jarvis and Archelios also concluded that accessing the target language in authentic ways led to acquisition, similarly to the first study, and that the call tutorials helped with self-correction, again, similar to the first study. The second subsection of my literature review is called The Advantages and Disadvantages of Call. The first study is a lit review by Cheng-Chi Lai and William Allen Kritsonis. And the researchers concluded in their lit review that the advantages of call outweighed the disadvantages of call. And let me just read off the advantages that they found for you. Here we go. So Lai and Kritsonis concluded that the advantages of computer-assisted language learning included providing students more independence as learners, allowing students to become the creators of knowledge instead of just receivers of knowledge, providing more motivation to learn, increasing exposure to authentic texts, encouraging greater interaction between students, the teacher, and the global community, lowering anxiety, improving problem-solving skills, and providing time or repetition for students who need it. They also found that well-designed call programs were able to give personalized feedback to students. In the same literature review by Lai and Kritsonis, they concluded that the disadvantages of call included the high cost of technology and issues of equity for disadvantaged schools and students. Not a surprise there. The need for basic computer literacy to use computer-assisted language learning programs, which may not be present in the classroom, and the actual limitations of these speaking programs, so the technology of it, and the inability of computers to respond to unexpected learning problems or immediate questions, so those out-of-the-box situations. The authors, Lai and Kritsonis, also concluded that people must use call programs with the understanding that they have limitations, and, listen to this, at this time they cannot replace a human teacher. Yay! It is their finding that despite the costs and shortcomings of the technology, that call programs can benefit students in second language classrooms. The second study in this subsection is a meta-analysis by Ernesto Maccaro, Zoe Hadley, and Catherine Walter. Now, whereas Lai and Kritsonis studied call on second language acquisition in general, Maccaro and his fellow researchers focused on call on English language acquisition. Maccaro et al. Found that, let me just read this to you. There were positive findings for call programs on vocabulary acquisitions, though some technologies found no difference. They found that in their studies, call improved grammar. Some studies also reported improvement in speaking and writing with call. They found that the effect on pronunciation with call needs further study, and there was conflicting evidence on listening and computer-assisted language learning. They also found that there was no clear advantage for call on target language reading. But in addition to these language or skill-specific benefits, like Lai and Kritsonis, Maccaro et al. Found that call offered non-language benefits that included intercultural competence, critical thinking, and motivation. The third study in this subsection is a single subject study by Cornelia Tschichold, and she studied the effectiveness of a vocabulary program that was a Welsh learning program. Again, it was a single subject study. And she found that for her particular call program, that call program had limitations, but was convenient and afforded opportunities for the learner to practice vocabulary. And in that sense, this vocabulary call program is, and others like it, are like traditional paper flashcards. So the vocabulary call programs have positive effects, are good to use, much like traditional paper flashcards. The fourth study in this subsection is a study on the use of technology by young elementary school age children learning French in Canada in an immersion program. And the type of call that the researcher Martine Pellerin studied was not the traditional tutorial call, but instead computer-assisted language learning using devices such as mobile phones and tablets for authentic motivational tasks. These tasks included, creating stories and making movies, things like that. And Pellerin found in her research that call was beneficial in 4 aspects, namely, the call activities created authentic and meaningful language learning. Second, call allowed the students to have autonomy in creating in their learning environments. Third, call increased the conscious awareness and metacognition of the students of the language learning process. And fourth, call promoted the self-reflective assessment and regulation of the language learning process. So, I particularly found interesting the way that the students used the technologies to map out their storylines, record their first product, review it, get peer feedback when they wanted it, and then redo any parts that were weak so that they came out with a better product. And so Pellerin concluded that students should use touchscreen and mobile devices to create meaningful and authentic output for task-based call in their second language classroom. Let's go to the next slide. The third subsection of my literature review I titled Preparing Teachers for Call. And I did this because teacher awareness of computer-assisted language learning and their training in call can affect how well technology is used for language learning. And so, the first study in this section was undertaken by Marina Kogan, and she studied future teachers or future language teachers in Russia and their exposure to and training in different call programs and different call techniques. She used surveys in her research, and her surveys found that students were not familiar with call at first before their training, but became familiar with it as a whole by the end of the training and the study. And in the end, Kogan concluded that the use of call in her Russian future language teachers increased motivation. Their collaborative call projects produced final projects that exceeded expectations. And so, therefore, her conclusion was future teachers can and should train in computer-assisted language learning along with the existing curriculum and instructional methods to increase learning for students in the foreign language classroom. The second study in this subsection is a study by Veronica Sardina and Vera Dugartsi-Rinova, who conducted a similar survey of future language teachers, but this time instead of Russia, it was in the United States. And the future American foreign language teachers used call in addition to face-to-face instruction in the classroom. And for example, they used online discussions, blogs, wikis, chats, e-portfolios, and video projects outside of class time. What the researchers found was was actually quite interesting. They found that the students or participants in their study rated online interactions such as discussion forums and blogs lower than other traditional non-digital teaching strategies. So the students or the future teachers valued the non-digital or non-technology based activities more than the technology based activities, the call activities. But at the same time, the students viewed these technology based or technology mediated activities as beneficial, and they improved their teaching skills, and they agreed that the online exchanges were stimulating, valuable, and highly relevant to course content. Also, interestingly, an overwhelming majority, 96%, agreed that the online interactions complemented the face-to-face course activities and supported their practical teaching experiences and enhanced learning in general. So both studies in this subsection suggest that instructors and learners should use technology to support but not replace traditional classroom teaching, and they should be trained in it.